Hello everyone. In today's lesson we're going to be drawing this castle. And this castle is a little bit different than other models we've done in that it's a multi-part model. So we're actually going to be drawing each individual part and then combining them together to make our castle so we can 3D print it. Now hang on, in this lesson we're going to assume that you already know where most of the tools are and how to orbit and navigate comfortably. If you don't, you should go back and do some of the previous tutorials so you're comfortable. In this one, we're going to move right along and get to building our castle. Let's do it. Now first things first, we're going to do a save as and save this model, and we're going to call it Big Castle, and select a folder in your Google Drive to save it. This way we won't lose any work as we go along. Next, I'm going to start making the base for the castle, and we're actually going to make a pretty big castle, one that Temple could fit inside. So I'm going to zoom way out so Temple's really small. I'm going to get the rectangle tool here and click and release and draw a big rectangle or square and click again. And again, we're eyeballing it here, but we want a castle big enough for Temple to fit inside. Next, I'm going to get the push-pull tool and click and release on that rectangle that I drew and click again. That's going to make the rectangle that's going to make up the base of our castle. Next, we're going to click the offset tool. We're going to go to the edge of the top of the rectangle, click and release, and click again so you offset a little line inside the castle. After that, we'll go find the push-pull tool, click and release in the middle, and push down that top surface and then click again. You don't want to go all the way through, but go down a significant amount like you see here. Next, I'm going to use the orbit tool, and I'm going to orbit so I'm kind of looking down at the top front of the castle like this. I'm going to combine the zoom and the pan tools to sort of move the castle in view. Next, I'm going to take the rectangle tool and click and release in the bottom left corner of the top of the wall and the top right corner on the top of the wall to create a rectangle like this. Once I do that, I'm going to select the push-pull tool from the left side of the menu, click and release on that new rectangle that I just drew, and push it down as far as I can get it, just like you see here. This is going to create an opening in the front of our castle. Next, I'm going to orbit our castle up a little bit, and then I'm going to go to the arrow tool or the select tool in the left side toolbar, and I'm going to click and drag and draw a box around our castle. I'm going to be careful not to select Temple. Once I have the castle selected, I'm going to right or secondary click on the castle and select Make Group. Now once I do that, you'll see that a blue bounding box forms around the base of the castle. That signifies that the castle is in its own group or its own sort of protected force field, and it's considered a separate part. Now we're going to go on making the turrets of our castle. So I'm going to orbit up underneath the castle and then select the circle tool from the left side toolbar. After I do that, I'm going to click on the corner of the castle and release, and then click again to form the base of our turret as you see here. After that, I'm going to orbit the model so I'm looking more down from the top of the castle. Next, we're going to find the push-pull tool, click and release on our turret, pull it upwards, and click and release again. Now we've got the basis for our turret. In the left side toolbar at the top, click on the select tool. And what we're actually going to do is click on Temple to sort of light her up, and then take the move tool, which you'll find in the left side toolbar as well, and click actually anywhere on the ground or right on Temple and just move her out of the way for this next operation. We're going to click the select tool again and click and drag a box around our turret. We'll right click it and select Make Component instead of Make Group this time. When we do this, this dialog box pops up. You can name your component if you want, but you don't have to, and you don't have to worry about any of the other settings here. Just click OK. Now, our turret has a bounding box around it as well, and this indicates that it's its own separate part. Next, I'm going to orbit the model so that we're looking up from the bottom. And the reason we're doing this is we're actually going to make 3 additional copies of this turret, and we're going to use the base of the castle as an easy way to position our turrets. So I'm going to click the Move tool with this turret highlighted and click in the left corner to start moving the turret towards the right side of the castle. When you're using the Move tool, you'll see along the bottom of the screen it says pick 2 points to move, Option equals copy, Command equals auto fold. Now, I'm going to tap Option here on my keyboard, and you'll see what happens. It's going to leave the original turret, the one on the left, behind, and it's going to attach a copy of the turret to our mouse pointer so that I can then click it in the right corner of the castle and place it. So essentially our move tool also becomes a copy tool as well. And we can keep this process going with our newly placed turret. Simply start moving it again, tap Option, and add another turret to the bottom right corner of our castle. Do the same thing with the Option key again, and you can put the last turret in place. We're going to click the Select tool from the left side toolbar and double click on one of our turrets. And once you do that, you'll see that the rest of the model kind of grays out, and we have this dashed bounding box around our turret. And that means we're sort of inside the component and we're able to make edits to it. So once we do that, we're going to find the Offset tool in the left side toolbar, click and release on the top of our turret, and click again to make a circle like this. Next, we'll find the Push-Pull tool in the left side toolbar, we'll click and release on the top of our turret and pull it down like this. Now, you may have noticed something interesting happened here. You only push-pulled one of your turrets, but all 4 of the turrets changed. That's because before, we made these turrets components. And no matter what you do to a component, every copy of that component in the model will change when you change one of them. This can be really useful when you're doing models that have multiple copies of the same thing, like the turrets that we have here. Now for the last part of our castle, we're going to need a little house on the inside. And to make that, we're going to take the Rectangle tool and draw a rectangle in the bottom floor of the castle like this. Next, we'll find the Push-Pull tool from the left toolbar, click and release, and then click again to extrude up our house. Then, find the Pencil tool in the left side toolbar. Click and release on one corner of the top of your house, and then click and release on the other corner. Do the same for the other 2 corners and make a crisscross pattern like this. Next, find the Move tool in the left side toolbar. Take the Move tool and put it at the intersection of those 2 crisscrosses. Click and release, and then start moving your mouse up to get the roof to stretch up like you see it here. Once you get it where you want it, click again to set it in place. Now this is a place where it's pretty easy to make a mistake. You can see here I'm trying to move the roof upwards, and if I'm not paying attention to the direction that I'm doing it, it can result in a roof that looks pretty bad or flat like this. What you really want to do is when you're moving it up, make sure it says on blue axis on your cursor. That's telling you that you're moving up. You can sort of think of blue as pointing towards the sky. So as long as you see that on blue axis, when you click again, you'll be all set. Now, the next thing we need to do is we need to take this house that we've drawn and put it into a group so it can be treated as a separate part. And to do that, find the Select tool, which is the arrow tool in the left side toolbar, click and drag to draw a box around the house. And when you get it highlighted like this, right-click it or secondary click it and select Make Group. Once you do that, you'll see a blue bounding box around your house like this, and that shows you that you successfully put it inside of a group. Now, you remember what I said earlier about us modeling this castle as different pieces? Well, we've been doing that all along. Our turrets are 4 different components, the base walls of our castle are a group, and the house is a group as well. And this equals 6 distinct pieces that make up the castle. Now this is a great modeling technique because it allows us to copy things and modify things as we model, but not so great for 3D printing. So one of the last things that we need to do before we 3D print this castle is actually combine all of these parts into one part so that it can be used in 3D print software. To do this, we need to select all of the parts that actually make up this castle. So we're going to find the Select tool from the left side toolbar. And before we start selecting things, let's take a look at the bottom of the screen. Here we can see that it says Shift to extend Select. And we're going to use the Shift key to allow us to individually select each of the parts that make up this castle. So hold down Shift and click on each turret, the base walls of the castle, and the house. And you'll see that as you click each one, they light up blue. When you're done, let go of the Select key and the mouse, and you'll see that all of the parts of your castle should have blue bounding boxes around them like this. Next, with everything selected, find the Outer Shell tool from the left side toolbar and click it. And immediately, all of the parts of your castle are combined to make one part. So now your castle, instead of being 6 individual parts, is now one part, which we can send to our 3D printer. We can check this by clicking the Entity Info button on the right side toolbar on the very top. You'll see in here that it says that this is a solid group and then it has a volume. And when something has a volume, that means it is a watertight 3D printable model. But we're not quite done yet. We've got one last thing to do. Looking at the model here, while it is 3D printable, it's still a really big model. If you look in the lower left-hand corner, you can see Temple is barely noticeable there. We need to shrink this castle down so it'll actually fit on your 3D printer. With the Select tool, double-click on your castle. That'll bring you inside the group, as we can see here because of the bounding box and the fact that the rest of our model is grayed out. Orbit underneath the model and find the tape measure tool in the left side toolbar. Click and release on one side of the castle and click and release again. You'll see here that the cursor is telling us that our castle is 224 feet wide. That is far too big for a 3D printer, but luckily we can easily change that with the tape measure tool. When you're using the tape measure tool, in the bottom right hand corner of the screen, you're going to see a small box that says length. Type in without clicking in the box, so don't use your mouse, just type in 3 inches and press enter. And what'll happen is this dialog box will pop up near the top of your screen asking you if you want to resize your model. Press OK and look what happens. Your model gets so tiny we can barely see it. If you go down to the toolbar on the left side, underneath Orbit, you can find the Zoom Extents button and click it. That will bring Temple and your little tiny castle model into view. If you take the Move tool, you can move Temple closer to your castle and either zoom in manually or press the Zoom Extents tool to get Temple's foot and your castle as close as possible together. And you can see here that your castle is about 3 inches wide, which is what we typed in. And if you look at it in comparison to Temple's foot, you can confirm that it's about 3 inches wide. And I'll bet you your foot and your 3D printer bed are about the same size. So if you compare the castle to the foot, you'll know that this will actually fit on your 3D printer bed. The last step is to export the file to STL, load it into your 3D print software, and prepare it for printing. To get your STL file, go to the File folder, select Export, and then select STL. After that, just load the STL into your 3D print software and prepare it. And that's it. You've designed and prepared a castle for 3D printing. Congratulations!